God damn it, come on. Hello, Charlie.
Hi.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Norma, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm fine. I'm trying to get just get everything got a lot of people coming in tonight.
All right, good. It should be interesting.
Okay, hang on here. I got one more thing. Hello, Gian. Having my volume control up here. Okay. You can okay, Charlie, go ahead and say
Hi.
something. Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, and I can show myself. I think it's interesting. You can hear me, right?
No, we can hear you. We can hear you with no trouble. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Let's do a microphone test. Want to get up there and just say something?
Something.
You can hear him. Okay.
Yep.
Good. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm gonna let some people in. I'm gonna give about. It's 5 o'clock right now. I'm gonna need about 3-4 minutes to log in. I just gotta go check one more thing, and we'll get started right away. Okay. We'll get started in about 3 to 4 minutes. All right.
Okay.
Gian, it's nice to see you tonight, and give me a few minutes. Yeah. Some chicken parm. Hi, everybody. All right, I just need about 3 or 4 minutes to get started, and we'll be ready. Okay. We will be starting in about 3 to 4 minutes, so give me a minute or two.
Well, on Monday, we get our new president. He's going to make America great.
Him and his sickle pants.
The last time he was inaugurated, he said it was the largest event ever to take place in the city of Washington.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when there was just a few hundred people there, he said there were 50,000 or something. He's good at exaggerating his success. And I hear he's selling lots of different products with his name on them.
It's the biggest money grab in the history of this nation.
I think so. Well, when you lust after power and money, it's insatiable, like drinking salt water.
I can't believe the American people are embracing fascism.
I don't understand it.
The great American experiment is a failure.
Not quite. It's working today and tomorrow. We'll see what we can do on Monday and forward.
That's okay. Don't have to find out. Want to help me moderate tonight a little bit? Yeah. All right, let's get you up there. Go ahead and do the intro.
Go ahead and do the intro, Andy.
Wait, I thought I was moderating.
Oh,
Well, I don't have to. Andy was moderating. You better moderate though. Yeah.
you were okay now.
Moderate and not filibuster.
All right, well, let's,
What we're gonna do tonight, just so you know, if it gets
Okay, hang on.
unruly, we'll pull a plug on Zoom and talk to
no,
people
no,
in
Andy,
the
we're
audience.
not. Okay, we're gonna start.
You-
with-
You're
Yeah,
not
you
gonna
can-
do anything, Andy. You're not gonna do a damn thing.
All of
No,
it, Charlie.
Charlie,
We're not
You're
gonna put
not
up
in
your
charge
views
of the
or
college.
anybody else.
No,
Okay.
you sit down. You're not running the, you're not in charge of the college.
all right, now we're gonna,
College of Complexes,
go ahead, start.
College of Complexes, it's a free speech forum. We meet every Saturday night. We have two rules here. One fool at a time speaking, try to be respectful, and no personal attacks. So those two rules are the rules of the college.
Okay.
Tonight, they're gonna be enforced like
Okay.
we haven't in the past.
Okay,
No, you're
So,
not gonna do anything
be alert.
different.
it's all right. Now, Charlie,
Okay,
let's,
you wanna start the introductions, Charlie, for the announcements coming up
you gotta
of
go
the
over the
schedule?
format.
Go ahead, the format.
Yeah, go ahead. The announcements,
The format is the announcements,
the speaker,
the speaker, and then we'll have questions and
Questions and answers.
answers,
and then a
and then
rebuttal. period.
rebuttal time. So tonight, we're going to try to leave enough time for rebuttals and questions and answers. And, you know, keep the time divided up in the, you know, more or less equal formats so that people have time to participate,
Okay,
okay?
announcements.
Now, this is a period, for anybody that's got an announcement, come up here and make an announcement.
Okay,
Well,
Charlie.
come on up to the mic. Who's got an announcement?
Well,
Come
we
on
gotta
up.
let Charlie go first. Okay, Charlie, go ahead with your announcements, Charlie.
All right. Welcome to meeting number 3,802 of the College of Complexes, the playground for people who think. Although I'm not a capitalist, I will give an advertisement for our half dozen upcoming programs. On the January 25th, Dr. Holland, Robert Holland, will give a political essay on something he calls the counter-enlightenment. The counter-enlightenment. Our nation was founded during a period of the Enlightenment. On February the 1st, Dean Knight, an activist of many, many years, will be talking about his trip to China. So we'll be revisiting China. Should be an interesting evening. He wrote a book about his experience, observations. On February the 8th, we have a pacifist of 3 decades experience. He says the past 3 decades have been decades of perpetual war. On February the 8th, Walt Slotto, pacifist from the pacifist community. On February the 15th, our own Dan Weinberg will be talking about nature and our relationship with nature. Is it something to be tamed or something to work with and admire? On February the 22nd, Eric Mao will be returning It's time to talk about what is the national character of the United States. What is it? That leaves 4 dates open in March. If you'd like to speak, contact me. I must have a title and a written description of your presentation to take a look at. On March the 15th, Reverend Laura George will be returning, and she's starting something called the Mothers Movement to end war and empower women. So March the 15th, anyhow, that's it, Eric. Okay, if you're okay, in terms of announcements, if anybody's interested, the meeting of the Cook County Green Party will be tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Contact me and I'll get you the links to attend. That's the Cook County Green Party, local green activists. Thank you very much.
Okay, who's got an announcement? Go forward. All right, Dan Weinberg.
Hi, my name is Dan Weinberg. I'm starting a business because I want to. It's called Don't Eat Sugar. So if you need help not getting off of sugar, if you have a craving for sugar and coffee, in your coffee, candy and all that sweet stuff,
Okay.
you want to get off it, talk to me because I got off it and I can help you with your struggle to stop eating sugar. Thank you.
Okay, Jan, you're up next, I believe.
My opinion, the only way to get over craving for sugar is to fight it for 3 days and don't eat sugar. And then you'll find on the 4th day that you're feeling better. That was my experience. Anyway, I've already given everybody this flyer. And so my announcement is what's on the flyer. There's a young woman, Emily Strasser. She's 30 years old, if she's a day. And she wrote a book called The Half-Life of a Secret, which is about her search for what her grandfather did at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And she's from Nashville, but she's now lives in Boston because she has a job at Tufts University. And she's not what they call an English teacher. She's a teacher of the practice of English. So, which I think is pretty funny because it sounds to me like an English teacher, but that's what she does now. And anyway, the name of the book is The Half-Life of a Secret, Reckoning with a Hidden History, because her family was never allowed to know what her grandfather did. And he actually died before she was born. She's only 30 now. So, you know, it's, she did a lot of research trying to dig up what happened to her family at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Anyhow, I hope that you like this flyer. If you want to go to this meeting, I think you need to email either me at janbudar1@gmail or just email NEIS at neis@neis.org. Thank you for listening.
Okay, anybody else with announcements?
You're gonna have to mute Charlie. I'm gonna take 3 to 4 minutes.
And what you do, Andy, is introduce a speaker. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Andy Anderson. I've given speeches here probably 3 times a year from 2007 on, and we need to correct the record of what happened last week, because what we saw last week here, this room was used for a 90-minute presentation, unlike anything we've ever seen at the college, ever. It
Is
was
this
90
an announcement? Come on.
Tim,
He's all set. Go
a
ahead.
man came from Michigan with a video that was designed specifically to slander 3 people from the college and 1 famous author that has produced 12 books on 9/11. Last week was the closest thing we have ever seen to somebody standing at the podium giving us 90 minutes of an argument of why the earth is flat. Totally, the man was totally so far out of touch with reality that it was embarrassing. And
I was narrative.
You can express opinions.
All
You can
right.
express opinions. if
All
don't
you
have
had was narrative. He had facts.
Yes.
This is salad great. Come up with a better arguments.
I think
Who's that?
it's Kelvin, by the way, and I
That's
think,
Kelvin. See,
Andy, let's move on to the.
I'm moving on.
Came
Say
here
what
to
I'm
hear
saying
about
is
You want some cheese with that wine?
the
Get
people on
out.
Zoom feel like they can just chime in any old
No.
time and
Get
interrupt
out.
somebody.
Announcement needs to make an announcement.
I'm
Yeah.
making an announcement about what happened last week.
No, you're not.
And we need to
Sit
correct
down.
the record.
Andy, let's-
Professor David Ray Griffin wrote 12 books on the reality of 9/11. So what we're seeing in America today with the takeover of Trump and the lawlessness, the corruption among
Okay.
politicians is due
Yeah,
to
it's not.
laws that were
Andy,
passed right
Andy,
after
let's-
9/11. So let's get into the presentation tonight, and we'll talk about this later during the rebuttal period. Thank you.
All right, Andy, you want to introduce Eric there, Andy, please?
What's the name?
Eric.
Eric. Come on up.
All right, let's welcome Eric. Eric, the microphone's yours.
Thank you.
You're all set.
Let's keep it under an hour.
Okay.
I should have no problem with that. I'm Eric Mao. I also run, I'm glad to be here. How's everybody doing?
We're fine.
Getting cold. I also run this group called the Geopolitical Forum. And so I brought some of the friends from that group over here, like Robert and Rod and his girlfriend, and Vic and all the, and Justin also joined my group. So it's dual citizenship, like myself, and so on and so forth. Arjun, right, and Alex and his friends and Brett. So if I miss someone, forgive me. So today, and thanks Tim for putting this together, and Charlie and all the rest. So I came here a short, like a couple of months ago. I loved it, so I came back. And we are lucky to be alive because we are witnessing the history as it happens. Because the day after tomorrow, we're gonna have inauguration, inaugurating in a new president, an old president and new president, because he has been president before. But that's not a topic for today. Also, tomorrow, something's due to happen. Potentially can happen, possibly, which is the TikTok is go offline. Because Supreme Court let the lower court decision stand. That means TikTok and stuff like it will be gone. But it's also a matter of enforcement and the new president, what he would do about it. So it's uncertain. But a lot of people already saw the writing on the wall, so to speak. They jumped ship. They call themselves TikTok refugees and jumped to another. Water. They jumped to from one Chinese platform, TikTok, to another even more Chinese platform called Red Note, because it's more Chinese because it's the headquarters in China. They didn't know what's coming. I was like, totally China thing, Chinese thing, not TikTok. TikTok is based in Singapore, although he has a parent company in Beijing. So it's a Chinese company. But now the Red Note, did you sign up? The data goes to China, no question about it. TikTok, they have their data center in the US, in New Jersey. It doesn't go to China. But people like to say, oh, Chinese spyware. But it's not the case. But hey, now you get rid of TikTok, potentially, you get something really Chinese. Last night I signed up. They have a declaration, declare a disclaimer or something. Your data is going to go to will be stored within mainland China. So I mean, but it's no big deal for me because my data is stored in mainland United States as well, and Taiwan and so on and so forth. So it doesn't bother me. Just to be totally transparent. But that is also not today's topic, but related, because today's topic is communism. But I'm not talking communism in abstract. I'm talking communism in China. Just an example of communism. With communism, I'm going to touch on capitalism, because if there's no capitalism, there wouldn't be communism. So let's start with how capitalism started very quickly. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, there's industrial revolution fledgling, starting. That means more and more peasants, they're no longer tied to the land. They're no longer being controlled by the landlord, because there are new opportunities in the factories, in the population centers. So they go to work there. They have new lord. From the old lord, they are now under a new lord, which are generally called capitalists. Capitalists that came from merchants, or they could be the old landlord. They became capitalists as well. But that's a different paradigm, a different lord. So that creates a different set of problems. That's where socialism can come in, and communism as well. Different people have different views, different definitions. So that's my topic today. So we'll go back to capitalism a little bit more. So now we're leading to communism. So you have the Marx, the Engels, and they're going in Europe, and they have the Russian Revolution, and Bolshevik Revolution, and Russia turned communist or socialist. There's no, actually, strictly speaking, there's no communism in the world, only socialism. Communism is the ultimate goal. It's not reached. It's probably arguably not reachable. But the parties can be called Communist Party, like Chinese Communist Party, Russian Communist Party. People like to say Chinese Communist Party, CPP, with a tone, negative tone, right? CPP. There's a reason for that. We all know the reason. But let me make a comparison. You know, the term people of color, or color people, color man, like myself. But nowadays, people say, to be politically correct, there's a people of color, person of color. Just like Chinese Communist Party is like color person, color man. Communist Party of China is like person of color. So it's your prerogative which term you want to use. It doesn't bother me that much, but I judge people by that, by the term they use. I can't help it. So I'm going to go over the communism, how China implements communism, and what the basis is, where it comes from, why the way they implement communism this way, what's the attitude toward it. So I start with a little bit of history, but I highlight the point of that piece of history I'm presenting. The first point for the piece of history is China is highly locality oriented. Many of you may not know, oh, China is China, but China is a humongous place. So inevitably, they have regional differences, provincial differences. Inevitably, they have like provincial, regional center kind of mentality. They speak different dialects, different economies, different families dominating. So I'll give you some examples real quickly. In 1940, that's the disaster, contemporary history, historical disaster, China started in 1940. A country called Britain, they invaded China so they can legally sell opium to Chinese people. So force China to import opium. So China lost pathetically. Before China didn't know it was weak. Now they know it's weak. And so they also let the opium in. They also gave Hong Kong to Britain. So that's to start the whole thing. And the Chinese, that was the last Chinese dynasty called Qing Dynasty. That was the beginning of the end of Qing Dynasty. From that point on, you have Britain, French coalition invaded China 10 years later. You have on and on, Russian, all the Western European countries, colonialism and imperialism, they all invaded China, along with other colonies, Indonesia, Africa, India, Vietnam. So that's a disastrous for Chinese people. It's a mess. So the thing I want to highlight is each region, each provinces, at the same time, simultaneously, there are domestic revolts, disaster. When there's a famine, people are desperate, they revolt. They have a group insurrection. There's one big one that lasted 10 years. It wasn't the central government, it wasn't the monarch that quelled it, that defeated it eventually. It was a local in central China, that province, the local elite, they organized an army of their own. They quelled that. Eventually, it was a long battle, years and years. Eventually, they quelled that revolt, insurrection. But at the same time, they want to be looked at by the government suspiciously. So they make sure they go out of the way to show their loyalty to the monarch. We're here to help you. We're here to help ourselves too. Because if the bandits or the revolt won, they will suffer too. Their local elite, they have property, their people. They don't want to be hurt. Since the central government is not able to help them or defeat the people, the revolt, they do it themselves. But they have to show their loyalty to the monarch. We're not going to be a local force separating from your government. No, we're not going to be. So you relax. So that's one example of a locality-oriented tradition of China. There are many others. So when the foreigners, the Westerners, including the United States, mainly Western Europe, they get rights, like colonial type of rights in ports. It's called concession ports in China. They build railroads. They're good and bad. They're brought in technology, new ideas, management ideas, different ideas. Chinese people actually, from knowing nothing about the new world, new technology, Western development, Renaissance, all that stuff, Enlightenment, to being aware. So they have some self-reflection. Also, they want to save themselves. Again, the government, the central government, the monarch was getting weaker. That means the locality, orientation, getting heavier and heavier. So that's a Chinese tradition, don't forget. When we look at communism, I will reflect on that. So they have a local self-help, self-save kind of movement. They have their own army or militias to quell the different revolts. They can have multiple revolts going on at the same time, going for 1-2 years, not as big as that 10 years thing. So that was a mess. That was that people are suffering, just like Syria, pretty much. Not just, but getting close. It's disaster. And Qing dynasty will topple because it was incompetent. People are suffering. When Qing dynasty on the last leg, when it was toppled, the process, all the provinces, they declare independence one by one. So again, that's an example of locality oriented. They declare, one province declared independence. It's not really we're leaving this country. No, we're just independent from the monarch. One by one, eventually all independent, the monarch is abdicated. So that's another example of locality. And a few years later, there's an opportunist. He was very big in the revolution. That was a republic revolution that overthrew the Qing dynasty. And the guy was a big help because he was the big military person. He has the newly equipped military, most powerful military man at the time. And Qing was relying on him to save the monarch. But he, at the last moment, he was negotiating with the revolutionaries. He decided it's in his best interest to side with the revolutionaries. And he was the one that went to the court, went to the palace, deliver the paper. This is your application paper. You got to sign and read from it and announce it. He was the one that delivered it. And he was supposed to be relied on to save the monarch. So you know this character of this person. He's a politician, you know. And a few years later, he said, well, I'm a president, great, but I want to be king. I want to be emperor. So he changed the system into empire. He wanted to be emperor. People would say, no, they're up in arms. This cannot happen. After a few months, again, those provinces declare independence one by one by one by one. Finally, he abdicated. He announced it's over. But I still want to be president. People say, no way, you're gone. So he's gone. Before he's really gone, he died of kidney disease. He making arrangement to come to United States or Britain, some other country. The guy called Yuan Shikai. He's the general that's supposed, a big military man. He has all the most best equipped troops in the Qing dynasty, but he was not. He turned his loyalty to the revolutionaries. Then he wanted to be emperor himself, and he was kicked out, and he died.
This isn't question and answer period yet. Can we wait till the question and answer, please?
Okay, that was about 1916. 1911 was the Republican Revolution. A few years later, the guy wanted to be emperor again because he was president. He said, hey, I want to be emperor. That was in 1916. It was only lasted a few months, 2-3 months. So again, that's another example of locality. Provinces say, we're not going to support this, we'll go independence. One by one by one, they say, oh, well, then he knows that's the end. Another characteristic of Chinese cultural tradition, they handle politics or broader sense culture, is competition of ideas. After the Republican Revolution, even before that in Qing Dynasty, there's competition of ideas. Whether we want to go to the European style, the parliamentary democracy, so-called constitutional monarchy with parliamentary democracy, or we want to go American way, the presidential democracy. So the competition of ideas. Of course, from the monarch, they want to do constitutional monarchy. They don't want to go presidential. That means they're gone. But they're doing lip service. They try to buy time. It's we have to do it orderly in 10 years. We got a timetable, 10 years. And then after a few months, you'll say, no way, 10 years is too long. They cut to 5 years, 4 years. And before you know it, the Republicans, then the Republican getting the upper hand in the competition of ideas, they can point to them, say, see, they have they're not in good faith. They just lip service. So we got to have a revolution, get rid of the monarch, and have a presidential kind of system. So that's and that led up to the guy who wanted to be emperor again. Before that, he was president. So it's a competition idea. Please keep in mind. You will see during the Chinese Communist Party of China, they have competition idea as well in the beginning of the reform. Throughout the reform, you can argue for that. The third one, you would say, well, Chinese people, they were like obedient. They have dynasty after dynasty. They just obey to whoever's in power. They don't want to rock the boat and just be a good subject. And that's not true. That's why I want to highlight. Like I mentioned, there's revolt after revolt. Or if it's not a political revolt, they were going to become bandits when they're desperate, when they feel angry or hopeless or desperate. So on the surface, or rumors go that they're obedient, but actually not. And the communists know that. They keep that in mind. It's critical information for them. You can't forget it. There's a Chinese saying goes way before Qing Dynasty, for thousands of years. Even the illiterate person will know that. You don't have to be a scholar to know that, which is government, people is just like water. The government is like the boat. The water can carry the boat. The water can also capsize the boat. All the rulers, everybody that in mind, including the communists. So keep that in mind when we talk about Chinese communists. That's definitely in their calculation, whatever they do. Another characteristic is interpretation or reinterpretation of foreign imported, if you will, ideas. Like, for example, Buddhism from India. Buddhism from India, but when it came to China, Chinese people will interpret or implement Buddhism their own way. Well, that's not unique to China. They do it their own way in Japan as well. But that's relevant to the communist rule today. So Chinese people interpret socialism, Marxism, Leninism into their own way before they use it. So let's keep in mind. So that's all the history, historical stuff, if you're already bored about history. That's good news. So move on to the next. So the Republican Revolution succeeded. You had a bunch of Republicans, but the guy died, right? The guy who wants to be emperor, he died. He had lieutenants and generals under him. Their big boss is gone, but they're not gonna say, okay, I'm gonna just hand over or move myself into the new system. No, I want to be my own boss in that region, in that province. Another example of Chinese locality oriented. I have the power. I have the military power. I have my territory. I want to be my own boss. With the help, you would argue, where do they get their finances? They tax local people, of course. They also get money from the imperialist Western countries. Let's say Britain wants to have better control on certain region, like Shanghai region. They will work with a warlord in that region. So I support you. You're gonna help us. So does Japan, Germany, Russia. They all do the same. So the warlords, they have the foreign financial support for their military. They're not much of a politician. They're military people. They have money. They have guns. So they lasted for a while. And the revolutionaries, they don't have a strong military compared to some of the warlords. But over time, they got the support of Russia, the Soviet Union, after their Bolshevik Revolution, 1917, 1918. So they supported the revolutionaries, the Republicans, on one condition: we're going to put our people there who are communists. You guys have to coexist. Otherwise, I pull my funds. So for the longest time, the nationalists, we call them revolutionaries, that afterwards they call themselves nationalists. They coexist in the same party, nationalist party, with the communists. Until they have conflict, they try to unify the country, get rid of the warlords, local warlords, together with the Soviet help. But they also have conflict. Sometimes the nationalists, the revolutionaries, they have been the upper hand for the most part, had the upper hand within the party. So sometimes they get paranoid about the communists. They will purge them. They will execute them. They have like give you some, well, there's also violence that just executes you. That happens a lot. The communists say, we cannot stay inside with them anymore. We're gonna be killed off. So 1921, they founded a Communist Party separate from the nationalists in Shanghai, in the hall in Shanghai. Of course, that's like a serendipitous, because they were illegal. If they know that's where they are, they're gonna be arrested. So that's the 1921 is the year Chinese Communist Party of China was founded. So there's I want to get into detail, but obviously there will be a civil war between the two parties. Also go through the Japanese invasion, World War II, and then after World War II, the Civil War. Because of World War II, we have to band together to defend our country against the invader, the Japanese. But after the war is gone, after the common enemy is gone, the fighting resumed until 1949. The Communist Party seized power in Beijing, and the nationalists retreated, escaped to Taiwan, where I was born. So even during the struggle, during the Civil War, the land reform by the communists already started. What they did, so give you a little background, communist Marxism, like Marx thought the communist revolution will start in an industrialized country like Britain or Germany. But Lenin had a different view. Lenin apparently knew better. Karl Marx is kind of like an ivory tower kind of person. But Lenin is a boots on the ground kind of hard knuckle kind of person. He knew in Russia it'll happen because the inequality, the social status and the wealth inequality. The peasants, they can barely survive. Lenin recognized that. And so Marx's theory was gone. It's not valid. And that happens to be the same as China. Well, Russia is not very industrialized compared to Western Europe, Germany, Netherlands, Britain. But it was more industrialized than China. China is nearly zero industry, but it happened in China because they're unequal, inequality. Some people are desperate, didn't even have subsistence. Some people are wealthy and they can live very, very well. They can live off the poor people. They also collaborate with foreign businessmen, industrial people, industrialists, riding a gunboat to China's shore, force China to give them concession for all the advantages, trade advantages, business advantages. The Chinese people, local Chinese people, they work with those. They can get rich from there. So that creates some resentment. But mainly the peasants, they didn't know that much. They only know, God damn it, I don't have, it's a famine and nobody's helping me and I'm so poor, I'm dirt poor. I have to sell my children, that sort of thing. So they go with the communists. So when they're still fighting the Civil War, try to seize power, they go with the communists because you're gonna distribute the land to me. You take the land from the landlord. I have farmed with this landlord for generations. I have to pay rent. I have to look at them. They can give me a hard time. I have no recourse. Now I'm the master. These communists saved me. They take down the landlords. They gave me the land, their land to me and their house. Like my mother has some experience too. They have a house, all of a sudden people moving to different rooms of the house and they have no say in it. But that's not the worst. They have this thing called landlord, kind of like a struggle rally, it's a class struggle where they humiliate this landlord because they collect the pent up hatred toward the landlord. They humiliate it in a rally on the stage, even spit on them, maybe smack them on the face. Occasionally they're executed, but mostly they're not. So that's their communist land reform. So that was region by region. When they occupied this region, okay, let's do a land reform. Let's do the landlord struggle rally. Let's do it. The farmers, the peasants are happy. But after the communists seized power, they changed face. Communism is not for privately owned means of production, including land. This is not communism, right? So they changed face. They say we're going to do collective farm, people's commune. So that's Stalinism. So the peasants, Stalin did the same thing in Russia. So peasants go, oh shit. So that's the stage of communism. They move to like people's commune. It's very close to real communism. And then we're talking about 1950s because they grab power, they seize power in 1949. You go to 1950s, they take down all the privately owned businesses, and all the businesses are gone. So one thing is, including the foreigners, the foreign businesses, industrialists, business people, they're gone because we're communists. We nationalize everything. There's no room for you. Just like Venezuela, it's like Vietnam, they all do. That's one of the big point of a communist revolution, is to get rid of the colonialists, the imperialists. Otherwise, you have local people collaborate with them. You can never get rid of them. If you want to get rid of them, that's the way. Communism is the way. So throughout the time, China, the "Make America Great Again," coined by Donald Trump sense pattern. Make China Great Again. You can see that sign, telltale sign, people's intention, or the government's, Communist Party's intention in the 1960s, because they have this movement called Great Leap Forward. Their goal, the declared, pronounced goal, is to surpass England and catch up to America, United States. So by that, they're very poor policy to do that. They have this iron mill to produce iron or steel. That's useless. Because they didn't know how to do it. But because of fervor, people did it. People set aside their farming job. They just do it because there's a quota. The government wants to see it, and the local officials, they want to have good performance. So the whole thing was a disaster because they didn't farm well, because they focused on the useless stuff, not just iron. There's all different industrial things. So they didn't farm well. So that induced the famine. Plus, there's a drought. Makes it worse. So people died. Millions of people died. That of famine during that period. We're not talking about 1 or 2 years. Probably 3 or 4 years. So that weakens Chairman Mao Zedong's position, because before that, he was in war. He has power. He has a number one of the equals. But still, they have equals. They have collective decision making. But he now, because his policy, his position is weakened. He's paranoid. Now he wants to be totalitarian. Being collective rule is not good enough for him. So he launched this thing called Cultural Revolution. Basically, they use young people, middle school, high school kids, give them some ideological fervor to turn the society upside down. They can go to take down their teachers and make them sweep the toilet or something. And there are people who are tortured to death. Also, Mao did that too, because he says his peers in this government, some of them he's really leery about. So he used that to get rid of them. Along with them, there are a lot of other people gotten rid of too. So that's 10 years, disaster. Ruined this country, ruined the economy. Economy is in ruins. Finally, he died in 1976, so that's over. So Deng Xiaoping, one of his former lieutenant, he was put down. He came back up. He, what's it called? Yeah, he resurfaced, became the leader. He said, we're gonna have a reform and an open policy. Otherwise, our regime cannot exist. That goes back to the Chinese people. When they're desperate, when they're angry, when they're hungry, they revolt. When there's a lot of revolt, you cannot suppress anymore. Your regime or your dynasty is gone. So they, like I said, all rulers, not just communists, they learned that lesson. They hold that close to heart. They look at that all the time. So they feel the sense of urgency. We have to do reform. So they reform because it's a big country. The different regions have different circumstances. This is one thing that's like a milestone kind of thing. It's also an indicator of the future. There's something called household responsibility system, also contra responsibility system. because before that it was collective farming. You don't get to keep anything. You don't have household. You collectively work in the farm with other families. You don't keep anything. You just keep what you eat. You eat with everybody else. They go to cafeteria. It's child time. Eat. You don't get to keep your say. You don't get to save. You don't have private property. Well, you have chairs and tables and stuff. You don't get to accumulate asset, the fruit of your labor, because it's collective. So they want to change that. Something called household responsibility system, which means each household will sign a contract with the state. Of course, the local government, of course, is too big. It can't do it for everybody, with everybody. So the contract says you sell the staple crop, this amount yearly to the state at this price. And over that, you can still choose to sell to the state at a higher price. If you still have leftover remaining, you can take it to the market. That's how they introduce the market system. You can sell to the market. You can keep the same. Well, it's all sell to the state at the quota amount, at the quota price. For the excess, you can still choose to sell to the state for a certain amount at a higher price. The remaining state is not going to buy from you anymore. It's too much. You can sell in the market. That was a heated debate in Beijing about this. So that goes back to the point, historic point, like the debate, competition of ideas. It happens within the Communist Party as well. So they're Chinese. They can live like in a vacuum. They have to abide by the tradition. That's how people function. Although you have your Marxism, you have to change Marxism. You have to make Marxism Chinese style as well. We'll get to that later. So that's another way to implement communism. They have to debate. Finally, debate back and forth. We say, finally, well, the Deng Xiaoping, the one that took charge after Mao, say, okay, it's enough debate. We decide, we push out the system in the most desperate provinces first, because he anticipated the system to go to improve or increase the productivity, more crop, better crops, harvest. So we start with the most starvation provinces, regions first. Then we push out to the rest of the country. Because the argument against it was, it's against the communism. Don't forget your roots. Just because we have some hard times doesn't mean we should abandon our ideal. You're veering away from our ideal, from the path to ideal. So that's the counter argument. But the argument is we have to be practical. If you don't change, if you don't introduce the system with the market mechanism, we're going to lose our power. We're going to be kicked out by the people. So that's the turning point. You can call it a milestone, because that's people, okay, since agricultural sector, you can use free market mechanism. How about the other sectors? How about the light industry? How about the iron, the steel, other sector, consumer product? So that's how things started. So that's an example of a competition of ideas, debate internally. That's nothing but tradition, Chinese tradition. And okay, yeah, there's something nice about the household responsibility system. So if the market price goes up and down, like everywhere, if its prices goes really low because of demand and supply, because the contract stipulates the price the government would buy from you. So it's like an extra protection for the farmers. They don't have to go to Chicago Board of Trade, sell futures and buy futures, that kind of stuff. The government, the social system, protect their, alleviate their risk of being hurt by the farmer. That's one thing good about it. Also, the government gradually narrow or lessen the items that they will buy. That means more items, more farming, agricultural products are for free market, no government or minimal government intervention. So that's all allowed in by the Communist Party. Go figure. So that's that. So fast forward. So that's Chinese reform. Let's contrast to the Soviet reform. It happened about the same time. We all know USSR collapsed because of the economy. But the economy, there's a lot of factors going to the economy. They have a lot of obligations, and just like US, they have to give aids to different countries in their Soviet bloc, or it was a Cold War. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about strictly on the reform. It's understood that Soviet reform also, they had their reform that failed because Chinese reform, they have the guideline. They have the guideline to the country. But they let each locality, again, locality oriented. You do your own thing. I have a guideline. I have a target for you. You figure out how to do it. So they had this thing called mayor economy, which means each town, each city, locality, the administrator there, like mayor, they figure out how to do it, how to attract foreign investment capital, how to get people together to start industries. You figure out. And they have competition with one another for their promotion, for their career, or for whatever. So there's no central control. The central government is just say, this is a guideline and this is a target. You go do it. As opposed to USSR reform. USSR is strictly top down. From the central government, for this industry, we do it. They purposely prevent competition. They're more communist than the Chinese. So no competition, so they fail. There's no motivation, there's ingenuity, there's no new ideas, there's no competition, people don't work as hard, simply put. That's one main reason that one reform succeeded, one reform failed. So that's locality-oriented competition. And by the way, like mayor economy, I can give you an example that everybody knows. Elon Musk, he has factories, EV factories all over the world. Mexico, certainly US and some European countries. But his overseas biggest factory is in Shanghai. Because Shanghai government, the mayor attracted him. The mayor wants his business. And Elon Musk wants his business in China too. So that's mayor economy. If in the Soviet Union, that's totally different dynamic. Probably it wouldn't work for someone like Musk. So by the way, in 2012, in a MSNBC or some business channel, asked him about, oh, what about BYD as a Chinese brand, the biggest Chinese brand that's selling EVs all over the world? Elon Musk was like snickering. It's like, hey, have you seen the reporter asked him, do you feel like the competition from China, BYD, do you feel it's a threat to you? Elon Musk, being Elon Musk, he was laughing. It's like, have you seen their cars? Like 12 years later, last year, he's part of the Trump administration. He also advocated that we gotta have high tariff on Chinese EV, otherwise we cannot survive. So that's how fast things go for Chinese development, economic development. Of course, there are Walmarts in China, there's Starbucks. The first foreign car company landed in China is Volkswagen. Now, just EV, Volkswagen's try. Okay, people say, well, Chinese is still technology. Well, we all still, right? I mean, Apple still, Samsung still Apple, they're still each other. But the main thing China's got their technology to get started is, for example, Elon Musk. I don't know it's specific his deal, but general the deal is you have foreign country comes in, like Volkswagen, foreign company. Okay, we'll give you a deal, we'll give you land, we'll give you a tax breaks, all that stuff. But we have signed a contract. The local ownership 51% versus you 49%. Also, you have to transfer technology. You have to let us use your technology. For the foreigners, for Volkswagen's first foreign car companies, now you have Toyota, all that stuff. Now today, Volkswagen is turning around. You know how Volkswagen German industry is in trouble. They turn around, try to learn technology from Chinese EV companies. So that's how things turn. What can I tell you? And also the foreigners, they're cunning too. Okay, I have to transfer technology to you, but they don't transfer the latest technology, the state of the art. They transfer the second line technology. Oh well, the Chinese will have to do with what they have. So that's a dynamic. So we're not talking about cheap toys anymore. We talk about EVs, batteries. Chinese EV is good. Everybody can do the bells and whistles. The EV, apparently it's not that hard. It's the battery. Chinese leads the world battery. Even the Western other EV companies, they use Chinese batteries. So that's how the things progress. Let's see what's next. Yeah, now the latest thing is the chip industry. You know, U.S. has this sanction on Chinese on the latest chip technology. China can do the commoditized chip, 26 nanometer. Now it's down to 7, but the 3 nanometer. Now they're talking about 1 nanometer. China is not able to do it. But they may do with their 7 nanometers. So and it's expected that in 3 to 5 years they get a catch up and not surpass with the latest technology. So the Chinese government's economic policy is to, if they focus on something, the state will invest. The private sector will have the state aid, and they will compete fiercely. Like it's really hard for the people. But when the winners out of the domestic competition go to overseas market, they already have a lot of battle scar. They know how to compete. They're very strong. Only strongest survive. So when they go out, the Europeans, the Americans say, "Oh shit, this is so tough." Now, well, they learn that from internal competition already. But it also causes the allocation of resources. Sometimes resources are misallocated on purpose or by accident. The latest thing about downside is the property bubble burst. So Chinese real estate housing prices dropped, bubble burst. You probably remember how the U.S. was in 2008. It's probably worse than that. That's the main cause of recent Chinese economic slump. So we hear the usual Keynesian theory. You got to stimulate the demand, the aggregate demand. You got to do the monetary policy, the stimulus policy, and all that stuff we usually hear in the U.S. as well. That's all good. That needs to be done, and that's being done. But let's get a little bit deeper into the nature of the Chinese communist economy, communist quote unquote. The land ownership, people are allowed to own land or own. You can go to buy an apartment or condo, you can sell it. When you buy it, you have 70 years ownership, but at the end of hasn't been 70 years, but expected at the end of 70 years, you just probably pay them. You just go back to the government. They will extend another 70 years. So that's like but it's there because Communist Party, the state is the only owner. But let's say owned by province. It's not all owned by Beijing. What is the state owned by state? Province by province. And they want to use the land to boost their performance. Like localities, remember, they compete with each other for their careers, the administrators, officials. So they create a bubble to boost their performance. Then bubble burst. That's the kind of disaster we see now. High unemployment. But on the surface, you don't kind of feel it, but the employment numbers are there. So that cannot stand. The government is trying to handle it. In a Keynesian way, and probably a little deeper, because some will argue because the government still owns land, there's some restrictions on top of the regular restrictions because supply demand or bubble or cycle, economic cycle. There's on top of that because there's one party system. There's less judicial independence. That makes businesses very uneasy. That's one of the reasons businesses, when they get a chance, maybe they want to move their capital elsewhere, to Canada, to US, or Europe. But there are many factors, I'm sure. It's not the only factor. Also, banking. Banking is very conservative. It's controlled by the government, more so than it is here. You heard about the name Jack Ma. He's Alibaba's founder and CEO. He's a big man, he's a multi-billionaire. He had a conglomerate called Ant Group, Ant as the insect. He wanted to get into not just business like Amazon, kind of like online shopping. He wanted to get everywhere, loans, banking, commercial banking, investment banking. He wants to be everything. But when it comes to banking, you get into another Communist Party ownership, the banking. He wants to get into banking. Okay, we can talk about it, but from his perspective, the reform, the open up the banking system, Chinese banking system, is not fast enough. He was mocking them in the public events. He said, "Oh, the Beijing, they're running the way they do a financial system is like you're running a airport. The way you run, you use the way you run train station to run an airport. It was like getting out of laughs, but Xi Jinping, the leader of the Communist Party, the country, took note. So the 2 days or a week before Ant Group IPO, it would be the biggest IPO in the world history of IPO. Xi Jinping said it's canceled. So people say, well, Jack Ma was jailed. Well, he did disappear from the public eye for 4 months. Then he reappeared. He said, well, I'm gonna be a philanthropist. I'm gonna withdraw from the first line of control of the Ant Group. I'm gonna focus on philanthropy. And people will say, well, just to illustrate the system, people say, wow, Jack Ma was jailed, he was tortured, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe so. Well, I didn't follow him around. I don't know what exactly happened to him during that 4 months. But for people like Jack Ma, if you cancel his IPO, it's not punishment for him. Imagine how many people relied on you, believe in you to get rich and that shot. That may be the one shot in a lifetime. Now, because you're big mouth, it was canceled, damn it. I sacrificed maybe my career, my family. I follow you, I believe in you. I probably invest in you, money. Now because you have big mouth, we're canceled. How stupid is that? So that's very big pressure on Jack Ma. You don't have to kill him. You don't have to jail him. That's enough pressure. You put yourself in his shoes. So that's Communist Party. They can control you. They can they can have a reason, like what's it called? Executive order. They just cancel it. It's a matter of degree. We have executive orders here too. They have executive orders. I have reason to believe executive orders in China have a wider range and more powerful. Less check and balance. I have reason to believe that. I don't know if you believe me, but that's the power. That makes business people uneasy. So they're saying that maybe the Communist Party should not do that, should have lessened their control of the industry. Because now they have, under the latest administration, they have communist representative, the party representative in big industry, in big companies, like your board, the board of 12 people. The one is from the government, the Communist Party. So that's the way they can influence you, they can talk to you if some sensitive issue. But normally they just sit there, okay, well. But when it comes to certain things, they have their influence, they're there. That makes you worry if you're a business person. So that's the way they control you or kind of intimidate you. You know, they don't have to say anything, but you know, it's there, it's always there. That's the reason, part of the reason. Of course, if you're a business person, you have capital, you want to move your capital to the US, to Britain, to Germany, to Canada, you have multiple reasons. This will not be the only reason. Maybe because you move capital, there's a capital outflow in China, let's say 2024. Maybe because the economic slump, just like any other country. Korea has an economic slump, the capital outflow. When things are looking good, capital will flow in. But I cannot totally rule out the worry about the communism or the Communist Party's control or the intimidation. I cannot rule that out. That's one of the factors. So some would say, so we're looking into the future. It's almost over. I don't want to go over 1 hour. So people say Communist Party is an impediment of the economic development. Further, some people say we hit a ceiling. With the system, hit the ceiling because of control, you hit the ceiling. I kind of disagree. And number one, it's just one of the factors. You cannot say it's conclusive, it's a ceiling. Number two, even if it's the ceiling, Communist Party changed before. They reinvent, like before, the reinterpret the isms, Marxism, Leninism, even Maoism. So the key, if you want to analyze on that level, the key is 4 points. At the beginning of the reform by Deng Xiaoping, 1979, he said, we reform, we're going to do capitalism. Everybody get rich. It's okay to get rich. Before, if you're rich, you're bourgeoisie. You're an enemy of the people. You're not within the people's democratic dictatorship. That's on the surface, it's a contradictory term, but it's not. Let me explain to you. That's one of the, by the way, Deng Xiaoping said, we insist on 4 basic points. Number one, we stay on the socialist path. We're a socialist country. We're not going to be capitalist countries like the United States or Britain. Number two, we uphold people's democratic dictatorship, like previously known as a proletarian democratic dictatorship. It means the same thing. The Chinese people, they changed the name. What does that mean? Because the Soviet, it's a democracy, but the democracy only for proletariat. The Soviet means the body in on different levels of government, even private, even the companies, factory. Each factory, company, local government has a Soviet, which is a body people get elected in. They get to vote to make decisions for that it's whatever entity. So that's called Soviet Union. And China has that similar spirit, if not the form, kind of system. It's the people's. So, but if you are not proletariat, if you're bourgeoisie, if you're a capitalist, you're not within the democracy. You're excluded. That's why it's called dictatorship, democratic dictatorship. Chinese people are the same way. If you're If you're a bourgeoisie, if you're rich people or a landlord, if you're capitalists, wealthy people, or bourgeoisie, you're not people, you're enemy of the people. So the people's democratic dictatorship, you're excluded because you're an enemy of the people. You're not people. So people's democracy, you're not included. So that's one of the insistences. We have to stay on the socialism. We have to stay on the people's democratic dictatorship. And the killer, well, there's no leeway. There's no flexibility. Number 3, Communist Party rule. And number 4, adherence to Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism. So number 1, 2, and 4, what is the socialism? Is public school socialism?
No.
Okay, see, we have this disagreement, right? You can disagree the other way. So when the government, communist government wants to open something, they can say, we're still socialism. We just have this leeway for you, this thing, we're being flexible. We will not veer away from socialism. You can always make that argument. Just like here, you can make an argument. It's a universal healthcare, is it socialism or not? Or you have public school socialism or not? By the way, Communist Manifesto. So public school is one of the things they advocate. Probably the 20 things. So those things you can get around by arguing, by reasoning, by window dressing, or whatever, whitewashing. Same with uphold the people's democratic dictatorship. Before, if you're wealthy, you have some assets, you're bourgeoisie. Now you're not. Well, we're still socialist. We're still people's democratic dictatorship. So that's flexible. You can argue. You can just whitewash. You can do all kinds of things. You can use your mouth. And number 4, the Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, this is totally different today. But we're still there. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. It's just 2 minutes. So, but there's no, it's very stiff. Communist Party rule. There's no way around it. They have other small parties for window dressing, but there's no question, everybody knows Communist Party rule. You can't argue away from that. Either it is or it is not. The Communist Party will do everything they can to make it is, including the water to capsize the boat. Now let the revolt, the desperation fester over. So that's what we're working on. So I kind of touched on the thing for the going future. So number 1, for at least near to midterm. Long term, I don't know. 100 years, Communist Party may be different, maybe called something different, evolve something else. I don't know. It's like what is happening today. It's inconceivable. You cannot imagine 100 years ago. So I'm not gonna flatter myself to even make that attempt for the long term. For the medium term and near term, I have reason to believe the number 3 Communist Party rule will still hold. But another thing, so given that, okay, that's a condition. That's a condition. Given that, so what can be done? What more can be done to continue the fast pace or the viable economic development? What more can be done in addition to the Keynesian, all the Keynesian policies? Because a lot of people argue like communists can be a communist system. The Leninism, Maoism can be an impediment to future further economic development, hence the ceiling. So what can be done potentially? One thing I can see is while Communist Party don't do those things, don't scare people. Don't scare people like Jack Ma. Don't do those things. Be more mild, be more moderate. And another thing to me, it's not just economic, it's justice, people's lives, people's rights, which is judicial independence. It is very complex thing. It is not judicial. Let me remind you, judicial independence is not yes or no. It's not communist rule or not. Even country like United States, the model of judicial independence, people argue, is it fair? Are they using the Justice Department against Trump? Are you this? Is it fair or not? And when Pam Bondi testified in front of whatever judicial committee in Senate ahead of her confirmation vote, the question came up, and she has to emphasize, I will uphold the judicial independence. I'm not going to influence by politics or by White House or by Donald Trump. I have my own mind for judicial. So if she didn't, that means that thing is in question in the US, at least by some people. Otherwise, it wouldn't come up in the question. Otherwise, she wouldn't have to swear off for that. So that thing is judicial independence is a relative thing. And for China, it's relatively low, obviously. There's a structural thing. Who has the budget? Who pays whose salary? If the administrator pays the judge's salary, hey, we can see a potential for interference, even though they don't have to say anything. The judge, when they judge a case, it's in their mind. My purse is in someone else's hand. Stuff like that. Also locally, like your company or you from town one have a lawsuit against someone at town B, but the court is in town B, but the town B administration and court, they were kind of biased. They were kind of favor their local person. That's kind of external interference. And there also the Beijing or the Communist Party, for sensitive, important issues, they can review it. They can interfere as well. It doesn't happen every day, but it's there. So many, there's conflict of interest. It's a very complex system, just like everywhere else. So to improve that, the good thing is you can incrementally improve. There's always room for improvement. But the bad news is to get a certain level to catch up to the Western standard, if you will. It's a long way because it's the vested interest. It's a complex system. Also, you don't want to touch, or you want to minimize the diminishing Communist Party control, because for certain topics, certain issues, 30 seconds. So it's there. The control is there. When you touch it, you prepare for resistance. So that's the future, and I'm hopeful because 100 years ago you didn't know what will be happening today. So given that trajectory, I'm hopeful for the far future. We just have to get back, do the right thing. Every near term, we'll get there. So that's all I have to say about this. Thank you very much.
All right. All right, we're gonna need some help with the questions. Justin, would you mind?
No, hey, Tim, I'm already here.
Okay. Andy, point out, we're gonna go to the, all right. Ernie's first.
Yeah, a little technical question. Why did they call it Communist China, and why do they call it a Communist Party? They are more capitalistic, I think. And how worried should we be about being at least economically dominated by China?
Number two, yes. Language
Could you
wise,
repeat the
it doesn't hurt.
question?
Really.
Repeat the question, please.
The last things first. Should we teach Chinese because should we worry about Chinese economy dominating the U.S.? And what was the first part?
First part was
why is it still called Communist Party? Why is it still called Communist China? Well, Communist China, as the Americans like to call it, to legitimize it. Oh, it's Communist China. The connotation is dangerous. It's evil because in the word communism, how do people feel about that word, right? It's not just McCarthyism. It's throughout. McCarthyism is like a soil. McCarthy. If people don't feel that way about communism, McCarthyism will not happen. But of course, the Cold War, this legacy of Cold War, and it's Communist Party because legitimacy. You don't want to forget your roots. That's how you hold the party together. That's how you're not contradicting yourself in front of the people. Although you do all kinds of stuff contradicting, you can argue away. But if you change the name, it's clear cut.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to concise your answers a little bit more. We got a lot of people on here. Charlie, go ahead. Charlie,
Yes,
you're online.
Yes, Eric, you stated that under communism, you made the assertion that under communism, there is no incentive. However, from 1917 onward, the Soviet Union underwent incredible industrialization to become one of the top 10 economies of the world, putting men on the moon and an incredible army and navy. And you're telling me under employee ownership of a factory, if the employees own the factory, there is no natural incentive to do any work?
I didn't use absolute terms. That's not my style, but I get your point. Yeah, I didn't get into I can't speak to a very much detail in the Soviet case, but there's this term called, I kind of forgot this term, negative budget or something. There's a term, you can lose money. Your revenue cannot cover your cost, but in a system that's not market driven, you will bail out in American term. You will bail out after bail out. You still, the business, especially state owned, it will appear to be growing, developing new technology, new production, but their red ink is getting deeper and deeper and deeper until one day you can build this one out, you can build this one out, you can build this one out. You have no money to build out, and they all went red. That's when you collapse. And China was that too, but by opening a market, in the market mechanism, opening a foreign investment, joining the WTO, they avoided that. But Soviet Union didn't because they're centralized. They did not have local competition.
Okay,
Jan, you had your hand up?
all right, Jan, speak up loudly, please, and shout.
We'll repeat the question.
Why don't you come on up, Jan? Your voice is low, we'd like to use the mic if possible. Just go right up there, Jan. I mean, we want to hear you.
We've been thinking that China has become quite imperialistic, which is, a form of capitalism. And so I'm wondering if you could talk to us about the Belt and Road Initiative that seems to be taking over Asia, at least, and that China is behind it, and it is mechanism for, or in my mind, I don't know if this is true. It is a mechanism for imperialistic expansion of China.
Okay, did you get the question?
I got the question.
Okay, thank you, Jan.
I also heard from a Northwestern professor the same argument. It's an imperialism on China's part. Right. Yeah. I'm acknowledging that this is a legitimate question even by academic in Northwestern University International Relations program. I'm just stating the fact. I'm not going to use this ism or that ism. You made a judge. What they do is invest in infrastructure building, mainly infrastructure, hospital, school, even stadium, but mainly infrastructure, railroad, ports, highways, dams.
Bullet trains too.
Right. That railroad. Yeah, they start with the regular railroad. They want to jump the bullet train because in a lot of African countries they're happy to have railroad. But for Indonesia, for Jakarta to another, that's not a very long line. They have a highway railroad from China. They're very happy about it. But Indonesia, they're keeping the distance on both sides. They don't want to offend the U.S. or worry the U.S. by going too close to China. But they're close enough to be friends with China. They have a lot of good benefits. China will invest in Indonesia case. They invest, but the revenue from the operating the railroad will repay the loan. They use Chinese technology, Chinese capital. It's joint capital. Indonesian capital, Chinese capital, but China's share will be recovered by the revenue. I don't see imperialism. They invited in. India didn't invite Britain in to colonized. That's why we call colonize. But all those countries, no exception, they invited China in. Even though it's get the most headline, I don't consider it controversial from my standpoint, but it gets more headline. Relatively recently, the Sri Lanka, Colombo, there's a port. They cannot repay China. So China, they invited China in. They wanted World Bank to invest. World Bank said you don't qualify. They have a lot of things to qualify. This World Bank said I can't invest. No, Japanese banks, U.S. banks, didn't come to a deal for one reason or another. And then Sri Lanka's economy was in big trouble because of natural disaster, other man-made catastrophe stuff. They invited China in, and there was a deal, but they couldn't repay the cost for the investment for the port. So China has a 99-year lease. Because oh man, China has imperialism, it's a colonialism, and China's going to have their navy over there at the port. No, Colombo Constitution say no foreign military or no foreign navy in the port. So it's just commercial. So that gives us a couple of examples. The others are this similar way. China has a long history cooperating with Africa. So Africa, even before Belt and Road, even before their own reform, even when Chinese people were starving, they had a lot of aid to African countries. That's how they got enough votes to get in the United Nations. The United Nations, before it was Chiang Kai-shek. That was on the paper. It didn't say Taipei or Taiwan. It's Chiang Kai-shek that represents China in the United Nations. China got enough vote by cultivating the friendships with the African countries, even when China was poor. Now China is rich. They already have a track record. African countries, they welcome. They ask for it. Not only for the investment, they even try to learn from the system.
Why? Okay,
Who's moderating? You or Cindy?
It's Andy, but
Back in the back there.
sorry, go ahead. All right. Why don't you come on up front with it?
Yes.
All right.
Hello, everybody. Eric, first of all, thank you.
Right up front to the
Oh,
mic.
we're Mike right here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. That was very insightful. Thank
Yeah.
you. More of a statement than a question. So I'm here because I'm a TikTok refugee, and all of your speech had me thinking it's great to learn history, but we can all witness history. So if you haven't, I recommend you go out on the red notes and see the beautiful. You all
You can save this for the rebuttal. This is
Yeah,
questions.
we have
questions.
We have questions, and then we
I have a question then. You mentioned Jack Ma, and you mentioned how the Chinese government put a limit on some of his ambition. Today, here in the United States, we have very ambitious business people that I admire, such as Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Bezos. What can we learn in terms of a governance? Do we think our governance should limit them, or is that already a lost cause? Thank you. That's my question.
right.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. No problem. Thanks for.
Right. The way I think about those things, if Americans feel that they can learn from China, they should ask for it. Well, otherwise, Chinese people are not going to tell them. But your question is like a thought process, thought exercise. What can you learn? Well, let me put it this way: the fundamental difference between Chinese system and American system. Apparently, they're all very capitalist, a lot of market mechanism. But fundamental difference is every country, number one, all the countries, no matter what you call yourself, big country, small country, there's always an elite that leads the country. That means minority leads, control or lead the majority, whether it's America or China or any other country in between. So who is the elite in the United States? That's fundamentally different from China. The elite, we all know, is the money, it's the capital, it's billionaires, multi-billionaires. That leads the country, the United States. In China, the elite is the second the second generation, a revolutionary generation, like Xi Jinping, like his lieutenants. Their parents, their fathers were revolutionaries with Mao, fighting the nationalists, seize power. So they're the elite. So you want to learn from China? You want a revolutionary descendant to lead the U.S.? Well, I don't think so. So it's very hard. It's very hard. Well, I don't know how. I'm not going to tell Americans how to improve their system. I think they have good ideas, but crossing over to Chinese system, I don't think you want that. And I think as a Chinese person, I think one day Chinese system will evolve away from the revolutionary descendants as an elite to what I don't know. I don't flatter myself to make that kind of prediction, long-term predictions.
All right.
Justin, you got the next question.
All right, loud, Justin, please.
Are you familiar with the plight of Hong Kong industrialist Jimmy Lai?
Yes, he's in jail. Hong Kong, the Hong Kong thing, when it was handed over from Britain, Britain got it in 1942. It's called Nanjing Treaty. Out of the war, the Opium War started in 1840. Britain had it 99 years. International law, this is a magical number. If in 99 years lease or treaty, then it's not permanent. If it's over 99 years, the territory is lost forever. So Hong Kong was 99 years. Hong Kong is an island, and there's across the strait, there's a land part, peninsula. Generally called totality is Hong Kong. So that part is permanent. Hong Kong is 99 years. But the time is up, 1997. Hong Kong, Britain say, well, if I lose Hong Kong, get that peninsula, it doesn't make sense. It's just give it back. So Hong Kong, but the condition, the deal is Hong Kong keep its current system for 50 years. That's called two system, one nation, two system. So we don't touch this. Beijing doesn't change Hong Kong system for 50 years. But Hong Kong has a different riots. 2014, another one, but 2019 is huge. It started as extradition law change because there's a Hong Kong couple. They're engaged. They went sightseeing in Taiwan, and the guy killed the woman because jealousy and stuff, and dump her body, and was found a couple of weeks later. He was already returned to Hong Kong. So they're both from Hong Kong, but the woman died in Taiwan, and the guy committed crime in Taiwan. So he should be tried in Taiwan, but there's no extradition. The purposely left out because China consider a draconian kind of legal system. There's a death penalty, those sort of things. So the Western country, the Britain, say we don't want any extradition treaty between Hong Kong, Taiwan, and China. Even you want it, okay? But now the woman's family is like, I want justice. I want the guy extradited. What's it called? Extradition. Yeah, but China say, okay, I'll give it to you. I will arrest him and give it to you. Taipei say, no, I don't want them, because that will signify the unification. You know how Taiwan, a lot of people in Taiwan, they resist that. They don't want the symbolism. So that's a dilemma. Okay, Hong Kong said, then why don't we have a law and treaty? Oh, then the riots started, the Hong Kong local people. They say, well, we don't want that because you're gonna extradite us to Beijing to get, because if I'm political, you're gonna extradite me to Beijing to face trial. Oh, I want that. And then it turns to democracy. The first it started with that. And I think people had the pent up resentment about economic condition, because Hong Kong is a very cramped place. People are like, you spend a lot of money, you get a bed and a little shared bathroom and stuff. That adds to it too. So that's like everything, it turns to the democracy. So it makes you wonder who's behind it.
Hey, hand her the mic. Hand her the mic. Just take the mic. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have a kind of an off question a little bit, but um, I think the last time I was in China was when my husband took a trip there in '81. That's been a while back. When we got there, it looked pretty barren, and we were there about 3 weeks. And by the time we left, one whole section of Beijing was filled with little apartment houses, on top of, they go up 4 stories. And we went to the what is it called? Where the kids go to study. It's a college complex of some kind. And while we were there, they had a kind of a revolution. People were shooting guns all over the place. We got out of there because
I think
this is back in '81, yeah.
89.
And they were, they was really trying to start a revolution, and it was full of police.
Yeah,
and we were wondering whatever happened to those people, and were they really just a bunch of kids pulling this off, or were they very organized, or whatever happened to them?
You started with college students.
Wait till you get the mic back. Thanks a lot. She's asking what happened at the Tiananmen Square, I guess.
You started with students, college students, local college students, expanded to college students from other cities, other provinces, for they're protesting corruption, because that's shortly after the open economic reform and open, from a state-owned enterprise or socialist country to have a market mechanism. You want to privatize a lot of enterprises. When you privatize, who are you going to get it to? So that's where corruption comes in. So people are upset. People are built up resentment about that. So that was it about initially. And as always, turns into democracy. And those students, they don't even know what they're talking about in terms of democracy. But in terms of democracy, they also have other elements joining in, like workers, factory workers. So they started with a local student and outside students, and then some workers. And finally, started with the government agreed to negotiate. So in Beijing, the Communist Party, they have 2 sides, DOF, and the more tolerant side, and they're hardliners. The more tolerant side, the DOFs, they were upper hand. Well, we give the people a chance, right? We give them a chance to talk to. The army never killed civilians. We're proud of that tradition. We don't want things like that to happen. But they negotiate, and they move the goalpost. They make student representatives negotiate with the government. After, we got a deal, then they move the goalpost. And the hardliner came up, say, see, we cannot negotiate with these people. So from that point on, they set a deadline. We're going to clean up the Tiananmen Square. So that night, they shut the light off, shut the light on, the psychological impact on you. Actually, to get out. If not, we have orders. 6 p.m. the next day, June 4th. We could clean up one way or another. Chinese government, it's probably their habit, tradition. They don't tell you how to do it. They just give a target, just give a goal. You figure out how to do it. So they don't have a riot gear. They don't have proper training. At first, they start shooting. People said, oh, it must be rubber bullet. But they saw the guy was like gushing out the blood. Oh, man, it's not right. And actually, most of the deaths are not on Tiananmen Square, on the street leading to Tiananmen Square, because the troops the divisions are from outside, going to Tiananmen Square, and Beijing citizens, local citizens, try to block those troops in support of the students on the square. That's when the bloodshed. And the good number that I know, I have reason to believe that, because we see a certain number, 3,000, 2,000, even 10,000. There's an anti-Chinese Communist Party person who's self-exiled in Japan. He said his number is 200, like lower 200s, because there's an organization called Tiananmen Square Times Square Times Square Mother and Wives organization. There are 200 something of them. So there's reason to believe the number of deaths is probably over 200. So
How much was the corruption when we stayed in one of those places?
How much was the corruption back then?
No, corruption was.
it's rampant. It's rampant. It's rampant. It's rampant. It's rampant. Also high inflation too. It's rampant.
Can you take another question?
Sure.
Ellen.
All right. All right, all right. Okay.
Why don't you come over here?
Ellen, you had fun over here?
Ellen, why don't you come on up?
Come on up here, Ellen.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, you got a question? Yeah. Come up here behind Ellen. Get on the index circle.
Yeah, let's do it that way.
It's not a real long question.
That's all right. We'll get it this way.
Yeah, I guess I wanted you to expand on this idea of democracy and corruption and kind of how things are spun through the media, the propaganda, the narrative. But I thought specifically I saw a survey that American students say that they would prefer socialism to capitalism. But this is Richard Wolff said, Americans don't even know what socialism is. And so I think there's something we could learn as I would say, how could we learn? Like someone asked, what can we learn from China? Or like if the UN, had one version of history, one narrative, completely correct and true. In fact, one version of history. How do we reconcile this false accusations against the other? I think we're trying to go to war against China, and I want to stop it. Thank you, Justin.
No,
You're not the
Ellen, let him finish.
So I would ask one simple question.
I got an answer. About the ideology, the democracy versus authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorship, it's ideology. So US and China, the competition, it's heating up. It's heating into Cold War 2.0. So US, because the US has been a dominant power for a long time, especially since World War II, especially after Cold War, 1991. So it doesn't want to be, US does not want to be displaced. It's displacement anxiety, but they want to compete against China, but to make it look better, to have more allies. Otherwise, the Brits say, oh, it's US, it's your business, it's not mine, don't drive me in. I want to do business with China. Germany would say the same thing, Spain, Italy, but US want to add to that. This is ideological. This is democracy versus dictatorship. That's to get more allies. So it's not really about ideology. Ideology is the way to rally more allies.
Okay, Mike, you got
All
a
right.
question.
Real quick questions. Only needs quick answers. Two parts. One, I'm not an expert on China. Only one on TV. But my question is, okay, America and Israel and Russia and all these militaristic warmonger type countries like America, is China a big warmonger? I mean, I know they were invaded by Japan.
Ask the Tibetans.
Is China a big warmonger country? I don't think so. Over the centuries, they're not a big invader, are they? Like in Israel or America or Russia, where they're horrible criminals. I hate to say America's a criminal.
You never heard of Tibet?
What, Charlie?
You never heard of Tibet? Tibet.
Did they have a war?
They conquered it.
China, a militaristic, invading warmonger country.
That's the question. Okay, let him answer that.
And where? What time? You don't have to go into a lot of detail. I just think they're more of a pacifist.
Get short on time now.
Well, I can address Tibet, because if you address the hardest part, the other parts is easy. I'll leave it to you because I have a limited amount of time. Tibet was part of China off and on throughout centuries, throughout millennia. The latest, we're talking about China, we're talking about People's Republic of China. Before that was Republic of China for a short time in Qing Dynasty. Tibet was part of Qing Dynasty. When Qing Dynasty was in charge of China, Tibet is part of it. One thing you're not supposed to do is your dynasty, People's Republic of China is a dynasty. You're not supposed to lose territory that your ancestors passed on to you. Will US willing to lose Texas back to Mexico or Hawaii to independence? No. So for China, they have to defend it. Otherwise, they lose the legitimacy. Chinese people will not let that go.
Tibet, who else?
And Tibet was there's a behind British, American, CIA, British. They have forces behind Dalai Lama's uprising. So China had to quell that. That's their job. That's the part of the job. Otherwise, it loses legitimacy. So that's what they have to do. But Tibet is good now. They get to keep their religion, their tradition. But well, bottom line, China, you can do whatever. Xinjiang, Uyghur, you can do your Muslim. Xinjiang has more mosques than the entire United States, like multiple times. You can do whatever. You can do religion. Dalai Lama or whatever leader, religious leaders in Tibet, you can do whatever. You can have your secession process. What they do is, I dream up, oh, there's a boy in that direction, find it, he's my successor, I'm dying. That's all, you can do whatever. But don't talk about secession. Don't try to leave China. That's the bottom line.
China's only hit one war, Tibet, in the last couple hundred years.
So that's the bottom line. If you violate that bottom line, there's a war. But if not, there's no war, there's no expansion. China has enough land to worry about. They don't need more land. They need market. They have a good market. That's the Belt and Road Initiative to get markets, not military.
Eric, the limitations on basic civil liberties in China, like freedom of expression, for example, is that a necessary thing, do you think, or will those be eased a little bit? Like, you can't criticize the government. I think we agree on that. Is that kind of goes hand in hand with that sort of system? And will it ever get better for those people, for the citizens?
I can address that. So I just addressed one red line, one absolutely unreconcilable red line, cannot be compromised, which is you cannot leave China, no secession allowed. Number two is, I can't touch on that, which is communist rule. So you can criticize, but watch what you say. You have to know, just like political correctness. Here you have freedom of speech, but you still watch what you say. You don't want to push too hard, then you suffer the consequences. Over there, you can criticize. You're not supposed to say, Communist Party, you should step down. Or the president, you should step down. That's the red line. But you can criticize policies. You can criticize on local level, that happens all the time. But the central level, Beijing, for example, COVID, they have China has one of the most draconian COVID lockdown policies around the world. Finally, people had enough. They had a protest in Shanghai and Beijing. With Beijing, they're more mild. Shanghai is more like vigorous. Beijing, a week later, they ended all restrictions, pandemic restrictions. So you're allowed to criticize, but watch your mouth. Okay. You know the gauge. You know how far you should push. just like everywhere else.
We have some questioners. All right, we got some online. I'd like to get a couple of them in too. And then we'll get you. Now, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll go online after this.
Yeah, I got like 3 statements to make and an 8-part question after that. No, I'm joking. My question is, who do you think is like the greatest world leader on the international stage right now? Donald Trump. And what do you expect China to, how do you expect China to react to the greatest president ever, Donald Trump? Thank you.
Good question, but it's very hard to answer today because today's leaders, they have not gone through the test of history. They're still there, and they're vested interests, people around them, and what they do, to say ladies, have not shown the longer term effect. But I really have one person in mind, Lee Kuan Yew, the founder and longtime Prime Minister of Singapore. He has been, it's not just me, a lot of people agree he was a great leader. If Singapore had been a big country or was a big country, his influence, his position in the world stage is not what it was. And Deng Xiaoping at the beginning of the Chinese reform and open era, he met with Lee Kuan Yew. He wanted to turn China into Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew said, yeah, I can work with you, I can give you advice, I can be friends with you, but stop supporting the Malaysian communist movement, Maoist movement. Deng Xiaoping said, done, we're not doing that anymore. So Lee Kuan Yew is the thing, you can tell I'm a big fan based on many things he done, his legacy.
He's a good second. Another question online.
Joseph, you want to go online? Then we'll go to Calvin. Joe Kopsick, go ahead and answer your question.
Yeah, so I can't remember the name of the economic reform, but I read once a short summary of Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms. It seemed like he was trying to achieve like a mix of family-owned businesses, it's like small businesses and big businesses, with state-owned businesses. Is that an accurate summary? Do you think do you think he achieved that, and do you think it worked?
Yeah, that's early stage. They have a small town, especially smaller town. We're not talking about Shanghai. They have a different scale, but smaller town, they have a mid-size or small size mom and pop kind of enterprises. They encourage that. That was actually some people, I know someone early on, like decades ago, he wrote his PhD paper on that kind of system. The guy's from Shanghai in the 1990s or 1980s. He wrote a paper on that. So that's a big deal in China. It's part of the, so the example that I gave was agricultural, but that's in terms of business and industry, that's the thing to go for a long time.
Okay, Kelvin, you got the last question. Then we're going to go to rebuttals.
My question is a very short question. Do you think that the Dalai Lama is or should be labeled as a terrorist?
I wouldn't go that far. I don't know if it's a terrorist action he has committed or his organization.
Well, that's what the Chinese government labels him as.
Probably not. I don't see that. He was exiled. He was forced to exile. He was to be
but the Chinese government labeled him as a terrorist.
Maybe they did. I didn't hear about that. But for me, he should not be allowed in China because he's a separatist. That's not allowed. That's one of the red lines, whether they like it or not. I don't. Yeah, it's many countries have that kind of red line. It's not very unique to China.
Okay. All right. Let's thank Yao for his presentation tonight. If you're going to go online, I'm going to give about a 3-minute limit to rebuttals. I'll be a little flexible depending on how many want to go.
Take your time, Tim.
What?
3 minutes? How many minutes?
We'll go 4.
4 minutes.
All right. Now okay, that's fine. Let's go 4 minutes.
But sure, it's okay.
Yeah, up to 4 minutes. If you're gonna go up, I want you in front of the microphone for rebuttals. And I need somebody to help time out. All right, are you gonna? Yeah, you're first. Anybody online too? If you want to rebut, now's the time to raise your hand.
I wanted to talk about what Eric said about
The time at 4 minutes.
what Eric said about bonus, not bonuses, but determining the amount that a factory should produce. Because in the Soviet Union, they had a huge surplus of bathtubs because steel companies were paid on the amount of poundage that their product measured up to. So I think that bonuses are in that same category because both Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island were based on bonuses that were given to the people who were running the construction of those nuclear power plants. And if you look in Wikipedia, you will see that Chernobyl 4 went online December 30th, and TMI 2, which is the one that blew up, went online December 31st because the builders had a deadline. In the case of TMI, they got a huge tax break because they made the deadline, and their nuclear power plant lasted a total of 3 months. It was billions of dollars that lost, plus all the sicknesses that have descended on Harrisburg because of the radiation from that meltdown. And of course, Chernobyl was even worse. And Chernobyl blew up because they were doing a test that they should have done before they went online. But if they did that test, they were going to miss their bonuses because they would have had to wait till after the first of the year, and the test would have taken too much time. So they said, okay, we'll do the test later, and we're going online now. And then I think about a few years later, they decided, okay, we're going to do the test now. And everything got messed up because as they were doing the test, the shift changed. People came on, they didn't know what was going on. And all of this was caused because there was a deadline and people got huge bonuses from the leader of the factory right down to the guys who swept the floor. Everybody got a bonus because they started Chernobyl in time, even though it wasn't ready. And the same thing was true of TMI. They started in time, but the reactor was not ready to go.
Okay, let me know. Okay. Thank you very much. That was really very educational and a good topic for the College of Complexes. My name's Ellen Corley. I've been coming here 5 years or so, and I love the College of Complexes and the concept of free speech. It's good to see a crowd here because we in America claim to have free speech, and but I see that there's kind of an invisible war on free speech, and we see it even at the micro level. A lot of it by the editors of who chooses the speakers, right? Who publishes the newspapers? Who chooses the ideology represented in the newspapers? In America, we have a Federal Communication Commission was put in the night after World War II to kind of offset the Cold War phenomena of, but there's been a subversion of that starting in the 80s. We had the Federal Communication Commission, the Fairness Doctrine that said you had to break up the newspapers and the broadcast, and that they held to the fairness standard of being that they have to represent the issues of public concern to the people. The Supreme Court ruled that the media belongs to the people, not the broadcaster. And I think it's the media monopoly broadcasters that starting in the 80s with the CIA has always had a subversive, really very warlike, invisible Nazi fascist warlike influence on things. So they basically undid the laws that we had of the Fairness Doctrine, the Federal Communication Commission, by having the CIA. William Casey was working with Reagan to subvert these anti-monopoly, political hegemony, this warlike way that America has become. And we think of ourselves as an empire, as an imperialist empire. And but the way we're doing it is by accusing China and Russia of being, empires, essentially. We did it with Stalin. And I thought, in the 70s, I was at Colgate. We had a professor say, I took China studies, and he said, yeah, we're going to have market economy. And it seemed like everybody was on board with that, but there was an invisible neoconservative, neoliberal, neo-fascist, really it's this invisible intelligence agencies that I think control the narrative, the ideology, the reactionary movement of the public. I don't think the public, we want it to go that way, but we've been miseducated to become, it's oppositional, and I've seen this the last 5 years. They're like, we ultimately want to go after China, that this Ukraine and Palestine. We've got to put in some kind of laws and have more free speech forums like this at the UN, where we're calling out America and imperialism for, I think it's based in the Rothschild banking system at the UN, for what they are. Okay, so, okay, yeah, let's, I love more ideas. Come back and talk to us about that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Charlie, you're next. Charlie,
I'd like to,
all right, Charlie, you're up.
is that
Yes, it's on. Let me show it. Okay, you got it, Charlie.
That's not the one I want. Shit.
Time to take it, Charlie.
That's all right.
Just wait a second.
He wants to do a short screen share. All right, Charlie, we're waiting. I can get somebody else up while you adjust.
Oh, yeah, just a second here.
All right. Kelvin, you want to go? Okay, you ready, Charlie? Or should I have Kelvin go next? And then you come back after.
Let Calvin go.
All right, just a couple of things. You say that the only real political oppression is against separatists, and that's a very natural thing to do. We don't have the same political oppression against separatists. Certainly not in my country. There are Scottish nationalists which are represented in Parliament. There are Welsh nationalists. There are Irish Republicans which are allowed to take their seat in Parliament. They don't. Certainly, in America, Marjorie Taylor Greene can get on her two hind legs and she can spout about separatism, and she's not sanctioned or arrested in any way. And it's this, and the repression in China is not just as simple as that. A friend of mine recently came back just 3 years ago. He lived in China, worked in China for 14 years. And he, a little sideline, he wrote ghost stories. And his boss came up to him and says, these ghost stories, do they represent your religious views in any way? And he says, well, yeah, kind of, you know. He says, stop writing them. Which is why he says, otherwise you'll get in trouble. Now, if you're repressing something as simple as silly little ghost stories, you can't really say you have a free society. All right, that's, you know, you say you have, capitalist freedom, but you don't want the trappings that go with Western democracy, freedom of speech.
Okay, is that it, Kelvin?
Yeah.
Okay, Charlie, you're next. Go ahead.
I can't seem to get this thing to share.
You want me to go, Charlie?
Yeah, can you bring up my screen?
I can't bring up your screen. You're gonna have to, what you need to do is bring it up on your computer, then hit the share screen button. Okay, we got it there. Just, I can see your laptop now. Go ahead and just do what you need to do to share it. Now, where is it?
There it's coming. Okay, this is first of all, I just wanted to say I knew it, a Tibetan monk who was in prison for 10 years. Once a month, the Chinese would take him out and ask him, they said, do you think the Chinese should be in Tibet? And his standard response was, you weren't here before, so I don't think you should be here now. And they put him back in prison. This is a PowerPoint, very quickly, just from my collection, overview a number of things. This is a short view of economics in China. It was the oldest civilization, 3,500 years, largely an oligarchy with an aristocracy. 90% of the people were peasants, barely living a subsistence allowance. Of course, you had in 1921 formation of the Communist Party, incidences like the Long March, singular events, and the war against Japan, and ultimately success in 1949 over the Republic. Of course, subsequent to that, there were landowners were put on trial for crimes against the people. Tribunals put on trial for exploitation. Let's see, what else? Implementation of communal agriculture, went through some high roads and low roads. It's infinitely better to have like tractor maintenance under co-op system as we do in the United States. So farming always has been a socialist activity. I like to focus on family life. I think what is the quality of life within a nation? From here, you can see what the Chinese, the communists were aspiring to. Along with that was industrialization. They were coming basically from no place, still making steam engines, but there's been progress made in that regard. Of course, they tried to enlist the spirit of the people. Nothing wrong with that. You don't see this under capitalism. People are happy to go to work, but they were building a nation, their own nation. One of the things about the focus is on young people. I always look at what is the goals of the nation? What is the goal of the culture? Here you can see what's happening there. Nice young ladies. Here's another one of them. This looks pretty good. It looks like they're well-behaved, productive people. Here's what's going on in the United States right now. That's where our generation is headed. Quickly now, China has the largest workforce in the world, over 700 million people. Half of its labor force is engaged in agriculture. Here's some of the things that we are buying from Asia right now. You could look over the list. Toys were part, of course, Mattel was animalistic. They had 100 companies under contract to make toys. It still is a major aspect of the American enterprise. Here you can see operations here. Of course, they got into electronics. They use a system called dispatch labor. So they don't directly hire people. They say, oh, we just are a hiring unit. Here you can see a thing, an iPhone. I like this one, designed in the United States, assembled in China.
Okay,
here you go with Foxconn. Foxconn steering. Here you can see Foxconn situation. There's a factory there. I don't know if this is ideal working conditions. There you make about 41 cents an hour, work 13 to 15 days.
Okay, Charlie, time's up.
And this is it. There's the highlight of the trains, and there's the young. Now they've got a problem because they got these nouveau riche. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Please come again. Look forward to seeing you in March. Thank you.
Okay, Charlie, unhide your screen. All right, I'm gonna go next.
What I think wasn't spoken about tonight was something fundamentalist between the communist and capitalistic systems. It all boils down to basically Adam Smith and what he said about, just give me a second here, I had the quote up. Oh, come on. Okay. And Smith said that if is it not from the benevolence of it is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard in their own self-interest. In other words, what they were doing was trying to make money so that they could survive. The big difference between the one thing that you got to understand about capitalism is first, it's economic freedom and growth. Capitalism allows individuals to pursue their own economic interests, leading to innovation, competition, and economic growth. This creates jobs, increases wealth, and raises the overall standard of living. Efficiency and productivity. The profit motive encourages businesses to produce goods and services efficiently, minimizing waste and maximizing productivity. Competition forces them to constantly improve quality and offer competitive prices. Innovation and progress. In a capitalist system, individuals and businesses are rewarded for taking risks and developing new ideas. This leads to technological advancements, improved products, and a constantly evolving marketplace that benefits consumers. Consumer choice and sovereignty. Basically, it says that goods and services leave the computer to consumers, giving them the power to buy what they want. This consumer sovereignty drives businesses to cater to the needs and desires of the people. You also have social mobility. Capitalism allows individuals to rise or fall based on their own merits and efforts. It provides opportunities for anyone to succeed, regardless of their background, fostering a dynamic and fluent society. I think today what we're seeing in our own political system is not so much an inequity of the rich versus the poor, but what we need to do is freedom of opportunity, equality of opportunity, meaning that when a person graduates high school, he should have that opportunity to get his education or to open his business or to do something else. Government has a place in capitalism, especially in a modern economy. You're going to have to raise new workers, school new workers, raise people, there's a lot of public goods in a capitalistic system. Even Adam Smith in his book, The Wealth of Nations, said something about the commons, which basically meant goods that were owned by everybody and administered by local government. So if you really want a good society, I think in an ideal society, what America represents is that ideal. I'm not saying it's perfect, and I'm not saying it's there, because right now we're starting to see, as Biden just said, the rise of an oligarchic class in America, where the rich are going to take over and take away from the poor. And that's something we've dealt with before, particularly in the 1910s under Theodore Roosevelt and the trust busting. And yes, we saw the rise of unions and the rise of a middle class. We've been through this before. We've seen all this happen before. And if you just take a look at your history of the late Victorian period, it was one of miraculous innovation. We saw the rise of the electricity, the steam engine, worldwide power distribution. But at the same time, we also saw aggravated workers' policies where they were working for poverty wages. We saw labor strife and strikes. But we were able to get through it because of the rise of a countervailing power force called the union. And we were able in the 20s at least, and after the First World War, to level the playing field a little bit more and give some workers some opportunities, as well as businesses, to do some other things. Right now, we're back sort of pseudo-Victorian times. Enough said from me. I think we got a good system. End of story. Thank you. Who's next?
Can I be next? I raised my hand.
Joseph Kopsik's got a rebuttal too from online. We'll get the online one, then we'll get you, okay? All right, Joseph, go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to start by saying this is a rare area of agreement between me and Charlie because we're both mostly defending communism in China here. I mean, at least against Nazis and fascists. So I get the argument that China needs to, retain credibility and legitimacy by saying, yeah, we're the same people who won World War II. We're continuing this, and we're going to hold on to these lands. With a little disagreement about what Kelvin said, yeah, you allow your country allows various nationalist movements, but I'll believe it when I see it. Like if the country dissolves and Scotland and Ireland are allowed to go free, and I'll believe it when I see it. I know Spain is a different country, but Catalonia got independence. They voted for independence. They got independence for 8 seconds before the state shut them down. So I'm not saying that the UK would definitely do the same thing, but I will note that the British and Spanish monarchies are related to each other, so I wouldn't put it past them. I think it would. I think the system that Deng Xiaoping tried to achieve, and I think the system that Eric is talking about being good for China, it does sound like basically like what Tim is talking about. For all I care, basically, it's a mix of small businesses, and unions are allowed to have a heavy influence. Of course, I'd like to see less state supervision. I'd like to see the state kind of not exist, but there is an attempt to preserve that kind of decentralist principle that free marketers and socialists both value in the mayor system. Now, this is the first time I've heard of that mayor system. The mayor's trying to get businesses to come to their locality, but it's better than centralism, but it's not as good as getting rid of a problem that we have in America, which is that states they take tax money from people to subsidize their own domestic labor and commerce and give lucrative contracts to, for example, only the road builders from within their own state, when they could save money by going to out-of-state workers, but it would create a lot of controversy. So a free market would involve just kind of getting rid of this idea that, local governments can subsidize their own domestic industry unfairly over the industry of other areas. So that's why I'm promoting, a solution that's slightly to the left of the free market capitalist ideas, which those principles are all well and good. It's just we need to have, a strong resolution to unrig the market and get rid of monopolies and free the markets from monopolies, free the right to compete against monopolies, but also the right to cooperate with other businesses and other people against monopolies to put those monopolies out of business. We also have to have the freedom to go out of business, which means no bankruptcy protections. If there's still the state protecting people from bankruptcy, I don't see that as a fully free market system. So we have to have free competition and free cooperation together, have a system like mutualism or Georgism or Titoism in Yugoslavia, which not only helped the economy, but helped avoid that country going to war with either the West or the Soviet Union, or preventing them from even to join the Soviet Union and take sides. So one area of disagreement I am concerned about, they were talking about Chinese imperialism examples besides Tibet, and no one mentioned Chinese incursions into the South China Sea. I don't know if that's still going on. Maybe Eric can address that if it is, but China might be trying to incur into Indonesia's waters and maybe a few other countries like the Philippines. So please comment on that if you feel like it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, we got one more here and then one more online. Sid too. All right, go ahead, sir.
So I think one of the more interesting things to look at when we compare capitalism and communism in practice is the way in which either ideology influences the education system. Now, in the late 19th century, there was a general movement, intellectual movement in China to question Chinese traditional philosophy and move towards a Western way of thought. And there was a rise of anti-Confucianism. Now, Confucianism justified the hierarchy of the state, And this was being questioned, especially in the context of the Qing dynasty, the failing Qing dynasty, failing against the Western empires. When we think about the influence of communism, we typically think about the obvious anti-intellectual developments that happened. In the late 20th century, there was a lot of explicitly anti-intellectual, there were a lot of artists, writers who were speaking out against corruption in the Communist Party, and they were censored, arrested, or killed. Now, the interesting thing is, there was this pro-Western way of thinking and this move away from Confucianism. For most of Chinese, for quite a while in Chinese history, starting in the Sui dynasty, there was the imperial examination system. It really became significant in the Song dynasty. And this was the idea that if you study hard enough for this official test, you will be able to be a part of the government and you will be able to rise in the ranks. Now, in the late 20th century, it was starting to be understood that in order to reach significant amounts of economic development, you needed professionalization in the workforce, you needed an education system that can allow people to specialize. And this promoted the development of standardized testing as a major part of the education system. Now, Bush, in 2001, and it was officially enacted in 2002, was the No Child Left Behind Act, which brought in standardized testing. The irony of the situation here was these broad capitalistic motivations for economic development resulted in an education system that much more closely resembled that of the traditional Chinese system. Now, in East Asia, China, Japan, South Korea, North Korea obviously became quite a different circumstance. But in those three countries, they already had a long tradition of standardized testing. And the effects were basically that genuine civic engagement, genuine creativity were not a major part of the education. Instead, it was about developing professional skills to be productive in the economy. So what happens is, in Japan, in the United States, now that there's this development, there's a really significant decrease in civics. 30% roughly of the humanities has been replaced by teaching to a test. There's an international test comparing academic abilities between different countries, but they also have a test on creativity. And East Asia has, broadly speaking, done a poor job, but the United States is actually approaching that. It's actually decreasing in a similar way because they've taken on a testing system that has actually ironically become similar to that of China.
Okay, we're gonna have to cut the rebuttal time now down to 3 minutes. Gia, you go next, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Let Gian go.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first, I think Eric, the speaker, did a good job in explaining the Chinese the system from Chinese perspective. And secondly, I want to just make a point that, especially to Tim's comment about capitalism, there's no black and white system in the sense that US is not 100% capitalism. China is not 100% socialism. China never claims to be a communist country, although it's led by communist parties. As Eric explained, China is claimed to be a socialist country. But the extremes of either system probably won't work. So in the US, we have Social Security, we have public school. Now we are hoping to have medical benefits for all. These are kind of like socialistic policies which will benefit for everyone. And when China was extreme in socialist system with no autonomy for individuals, the economy suffer. So China started to open and reform in 1978 and achieved economic miracle. So I think we have to think beyond black and white, socialism versus capitalism or capitalism versus communism. There must be something good from each system that we need to have humility to learn and to understand before judgment. That's my comment.
Okay, you're next, sir.
So President Biden is not fit for office.
All right.
President Trump is not fit for office. I would not be able to legally say that in China. And Eric, earlier, when I asked the question about the suppression or the limitations on individual liberties in China, you kind of glossed over it. I think it's important to emphasize how bad that is and how it's going to lead. It's not sustainable ultimately, and it's going to lead to ruin for China and probably for the rest of the world, because China is such a great power. And as far as communism and socialism and capitalism, these are all kind of intellectually lazy terms that people use. It's kind of akin to being a fan of a sports team. I'm a Packers fan, I'm a Bears fan. I mean, there's not much behind it because it's kind of pretty arbitrary. You can kind of like pour your own definition into the meaning, or your own meaning into the definition, and it can be manipulated. So I don't think those are useful terms, and we should get away from them. The useful term is statism. We should be worried about statism, how much we allow the state to suppress our individual liberties. And that's the thing we should be focusing on. Earlier, somebody mentioned that freedom of speech in the US is under attack or something like that. That's ludicrous. I mean, cancel culture is not a thing. It's just kind of fear mongering. You can say whatever you want. If you get fired for it, that's on you, or if people criticize you for it, that's also on you. And there are consequences professionally. That's not the government coming after you. That's not the government coming and arresting you and throwing you in jail or something like might happen in China or other countries around the world. So that's it.
Okay. Sid Cohen, you're next. Okay, we're gonna get the mic over to you, Sid. Just, okay, all right, Andy, watch it. You gotta want to sit on camera there.
So let's look at objective facts. And when you look at that, you see who is really an imperialist country. We look at China, it has one base in the South China Sea. You look at the United States, it has 800, 900 bases across the world. Another thing, it produces more armament than the next industrial countries behind it. So if you look at those facts, we can see the United States is a imperialist country. In Mexico, the Mexican workers that produce cars for the United States make 1/20 of the American workers that produce cars in the United States. And it doesn't do that just in Mexico. It does that all over the world. It makes super profits, and that's why it goes overseas. That's why somebody like Elon Musk has that much money. It's not how hard you work that makes you money. It's how hard you got other people working for you that makes that much money. So the United States is objectively the biggest industrial imperialist country that ever existed.
Okay. All right, Sid. Justin, you want to go? All right, Justin, go ahead. Bring the mic back to Justin. Put the mic back on the stand. Okay. Put the mic back in front of the speaker and put back in front of the mic.
I agree with the points being made about the sort of semantic, sort of like capitalism versus socialism. I prefer to say that I am a capitalist because these are the words that are available to me. I feel it's a good descriptor, and I can give a defense for it. But I think socialism is a more nebulous sort of. There's too many definitions. For example, people like to define socialism as when government does things, which is kind of silly because, as Tim mentioned, Adam Smith was not an anarchist, and there are certain statist things that might be necessary for a capitalist system: enforcement of contracts, protection of private property, etc. And I don't think any capitalist would say that defense of private property is socialism. However, people who do advocate for socialism will often say things like, well, socialism is like when you have cops and roads and fire departments. And again, that is also pretty silly. Calvin said something about Marjorie Taylor Greene not being arrested for preaching separatism. While I don't agree with her on practically anything, the fact that she's not getting arrested is because we do have freedom of speech here in the United States. So I wouldn't advocate, even though she's got horrible ideas, I would not advocate for her arrest. Other silly things I heard tonight: imperialism is a form of capitalism. Okay. I think people invading and conquering has just always existed. I think that's a human thing, not a capitalist thing, unless we're going to say Genghis Khan was a capitalist or the Roman Empire was I don't know. It just seems kind of a silly sort of thing. And I like Charlie proving how awesome China is by just showing pictures of people being happy. I can do the same thing and say, capitalism is great because look at this picture of smiling people in this capitalist country. I want to comment on the people online. They don't pay tuition, but then they want to, make sure that we have to yell our questions back and da 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 da. If you get what you're paid for, sorry. So if you want to come and hear it for yourself, come on in and pay your tuition like the rest of us. All you guys are a bunch of freeloaders. And it's kind of a pain in the ass to have to accommodate you guys because you guys don't want to be here in person. Thank you.
Are you calling me a freeloader? Sit down. You don't insult the college.
Driving for 2 hours is also a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Well, maybe people are old and don't feel well. You don't insult the college.
All right, my turn.
All are welcome at the college.
Hey, Charlie, I'm talking now. I was not even going to offer a rebuttal until I heard the absurdity of, free speech isn't under attack. Cancel culture is just like a boogeyman or something like that. Tell that to James Damore, who used to work at Google. He got fired from Google in 2017 because he wrote a 10-page memo on the differences and proclivities between men and women and how that reflects in STEM. Something that was explicitly solicited by the company of him, and he was fired for it, and nothing in the document was untrue. That's cancel culture. People found that Brendan Eich, who used to run Mozilla, and I think now he's in charge of Brave, the internet browser, somebody found out that he donated, what was it, maybe $1,000 to like a proposition in California that was about yes or no on like same-sex marriage or something like that. He didn't even donate on like a pro or con side of that issue. He just donated to put the issue on the ballot. People found out about that, they freaked out, and he was booted out of there or pressured out of there or whatever. Cancel culture is a thing. We have the HRification of every facet of life these days. You say the wrong thing, you'll get doxxed, and people will show up to your house and they will try to murder you, like what happened to Nicholas J. Fuentes just a few weeks ago. People found out, they didn't like what he said online, they found out where he lived, and they tried to kill him. That's more than cancel culture. So anybody who says cancel culture doesn't exist, no personal attacks, I have to hold that back. Anybody who says cancel culture doesn't exist is absolutely 100% wrong. And then as far as free speech, I just got to say a couple of things. If you're not familiar with the censored industrial complex, you're missing the boat. Free speech is curtailed and corralled by NGO laundering. So you get these NGOs and they, style themselves as misinformation and disinformation experts. And what happens? Ooh, the government wants to study the misinformation and disinformation and how to combat that. That's a violation of my free speech rights. Who the hell is some NGO funded by government to determine what is misinformation, disinformation? And then guess what happens? Social media companies, take the advice of these NGOs, these supposedly objective NGOs, these experts, and they censor on behalf of these NGOs, which are funded by government. So even if it's not direct, it's indirect. Censorship is under attack. Anybody who thinks otherwise is either a propagandist themselves or hopelessly ignorant.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Just want to make a quick rebuttal to the last speaker here, talking about cancel culture and NGO laundering of free speech and whatever it might be. I'll keep this short. One, cancel culture. Yes, it's a real thing. No, the government doesn't have anything to do with it. James Damore was fired because people didn't see him as a serious person at Google. Google thought it looked bad for the brand. They fired him. Same thing with Brendan Eich. Mozilla fired him because of the bad publicity. The government had nothing to do with it. Nick Fuentes, when people went to call his house, or when people went to go murder him at his house, who do you think he would call? He would call the government to come and protect him. None of this has anything to do, like James Damore and Brendan Eich getting fired has nothing to do with government action. That's because the reason that they got fired is because they went out in public and they did something that was bad for their company's brand, and their company is allowed to fire them for at any time for any reason. The free speech, quote unquote, in the US doesn't protect you from the consequences of your actions in a personal setting. It protects you from the consequences of your actions in a government setting. And that is what is so often missed by people who are making these claims that free speech is under attack. And to the other point about NGO washing, sure, maybe the government gives them some money, but they're putting out an advisory opinion. There's no, formal set of rules that are being made based on an advisory opinion by some NGO. So just wanted to put that out there. And thanks for having me.
All right, Andy, make it quick. We got to have you give a quick rebut. You get the last word, but make it quick. Andy, go ahead.
Yep. I handed out two flyers. One is called Americans Who Tell the Truth. There's portraits of 275 famous Americans, some living, some dating back to Abraham Lincoln's time. The people on this site, they have biographies. They're highly credible. I gave you a picture in there, a biography of David Ray Griffin. He's one of the most highly credible elder statesmen we have. He wrote 12 books on 9/11, on the history of the mythology that we were sold by the press. Last week, our speaker stood up here and said, all this man does is lies. This other site is called Want to Know Info. There's a dozen different disciplines. There's thousands of dedicated articles, verified news site articles. It's the most highly credible site I know of. And their motto is, we're all working for a brighter future. If we put our political differences aside, we can move the country forward. For those of you that like to read, this is an annual. It comes out every year. It's called Project Censored from Sonoma State. This is censored 2011. This had a chapter in it on the false flag of 9/11, how it was a giant real estate fraud in New York. Here's a couple other books. They talk about free speech. These are radioactive subjects. The current radioactive subject is all the people that are dying in American hospitals from medical malpractice with our for-profit healthcare system. If we had single-payer healthcare system that's nonprofit like what we have all over the world, people wouldn't be dying by the hundreds of thousands for treatment that's toxic, insurance people withholding payments. This book is called The Medical Pharmaceutical Killing Machine. It's new. And of course, for those of you that would like to read a book out of the 50 or so that we've digested in our database, this is called The New Pearl Harbor Revisited. 9/11, the cover-up, and the truth, the expose. That's one of David Ray Griffin's 14 books he published on the mythology of 9/11. So I recommend everybody watch the video. First thing you do is log on to Want to Know Info. It's on this site, Want to Know Info, and log on and watch the video, the 15-minute introduction of Amber Yang saying, we're all working for a brighter future. The media isn't giving us a full story on many different kinds of things. Try to find anything on this site that's not documented and highly credible. You're in for a treat. So my hobby for the last 40 years has been translating books like this into one-page cliff notes that somebody can read in 5 minutes, because there's no time to read 20 or 30 books. This site is printer friendly. Yeah, if you don't have time to read 20 books on a subject or all the references they got, you can download a 1-page or a 2-page or a 10-page summary. Okay. Anybody got any questions? Come see me afterwards. Okay, we're going to have the final wrap up with our speaker, Eric. And one thing I'd like to point out about his talk tonight, this is what the College of Complex is supposed to look like. A really well-educated person that gives us a knowledgeable presentation that's based in reality, not something based on
What are you doing there?
our lives, like what we had last week. What was that, Charlie?
What are you doing there that's educated people?
All right, Charlie.
That's what we were talking about when you cut me off before. So we'll just have the
You have to talk like everyone else.
Yeah.
Follow the
This
rules.
is what you call censorship. So
Yeah,
Charlie
follow
won't
the
let
rules. You
people.
don't like rules.
Charlie, and you got a big mouth.
Yeah, you think you can talk whenever you want.
Let's cut it off.
I'll go in
Get the
with
final rebuttal.
I'll go within 5 minutes. Very quick, the Tibetan case, the monk. I have no knowledge of that case, but I'm not denying it. I'm the first one to admit due process is lacking in China in cases like that. They're improving it, but I'm sure back then it was even worse. Number two, the freedom of speech, that's different. China not only doesn't have the level of freedom of speech that the United States has, it doesn't have the Western level of freedom of speech. And that's definitely, for example, the new Red Note, someone in the United States, they get naughty. They say, let's put something up there, see what happens. They say, Taiwan's a country, and it was disappeared. It was deleted, I was told. If you do something like that, leave a message or something posting, it was deleted. And that happens within China as well. But you don't get arrested for that, but you get deleted. You can't get suspended, stuff like that. It happens on Facebook too. Used to Twitter too. Manufacturing, the U.S. is losing manufacturing. The end result, I'm not promoting a conspiracy, but the end result is U.S. exchange their manufacturing for financing. So end result is China has a manufacturing economy, U.S. has a financial economy. Wall Street is really big. The financial sector is very, very small to nothing. And the South China Sea. South China Sea, this is one of the cases that South China Sea that was traditionally, historically owned by China. so that they should not, they don't want to lose it, whether Qing Dynasty or Republicans or the communists. And what they do is very fuzzy, very ambiguous. They don't say this is our territory, but you can still go. You can still go through it. But they don't welcome the military Navy ships. But if commercial ships or whatever transport, you can go through it. They have no problem with that. So that's the thing. They also call them militarized China. They have some coral islands with the missiles and the airfields. That's to prevent the U.S. If China has nothing to deny the U.S. access, the military Navy access, they have to have something. So that's not a Chinese initiative as far as I'm concerned. And the capitalism, what you say, the Adam Smith, we call it market mechanism, the market mechanism. Well, capitalism, for me, capitalism, it means the system with a lot of capital and with market mechanism as well, the free market mechanism. But number one thing, capitalism, you gotta have a lot of capital. Where do you get the capital? You go to third world countries, go to Africa, go to India, go to China. Back then, they had very little resistance. You can use your technology to rob them. That's how you get your first part of gold. Then you can talk to them, and everybody has to open your market because you already built up. You have no fear. You have capital. You have the market. You have the industry. So that's why my understanding of capitalism.
Okay, now just close us out and adjourn.
Yeah,
adjourn us tonight.
Yeah. Thank you. This is adjourned. Thank you for the opportunity.